Okay, open up your Bibles to Zechariah chapter 5. Zechariah chapter 5. We're going to finish out. We're going to do chapter 5 and chapter 6, Lord willing, and we'll finish out all the visions in this first section today. Now, chapter 5 contains two visions with one common theme, and they relate to how God deals with sin. Specifically, they emphasize what God was going to do about the sin problem of his people. So let's start by looking at verses 1 through 4, chapter 5. Then I lifted up my eyes again, and looked, and behold, there was a flying scroll. And he said to me, "What do you see?" And I answered, "I see a flying scroll. Its length is 20 cubits, and its width 10 cubits. Then he said to me, "This is the curse that is going forth over the face of the whole land. Surely everyone who steals will be purged away according to the writing on one side, and everyone who swears will be purged away according to the writing on the other side. I will make it go forth, declares the Lord of hosts, and it will enter the house of the thief and the house of the one who swears falsely by my name, and it will spend the night within that house and consume it with its timber and stones." So he sees this flying scroll. Why flying? If you wanted to get somewhere fast, is it faster to walk, drive, or fly? Fly. So if the scroll is flying and it's going to go forth, what do you think that indicates? Yes, this is going to happen quickly. This isn't something that's far in the future. It's going to come quick. The size of the scroll is about 30 feet by 15 feet. Is that a pretty big size for a scroll? Yeah, it is. It's. I think the idea of that, my guess is that it is obvious. What's coming and this curse and what these people have done is clear. And everyone knows it, and they know that this is coming. And what kind of curse do you think this might be? I mean, it's going against those who steal and those who swear falsely by the Lord's name. I really kind of see this probably more of a all-encompassing. But what is this curse that God is talking about here? Okay. Anything specific?
Well, total destruction, basically.
Okay. It definitely is total destruction. Goes in the house, it's going to stay the night, and not only destroy the person, but everything they own. Yeah. So that all that they have will be destroyed with them. It makes me think back on the blessings and the cursings from the book of Deuteronomy. Remember, here's the blessings if you do what I say. Here's the curse if you do not. So all those who continue to not do God's will, the curse is coming. I think that's what he's saying here. So you got let's look at those. So the two sins that are listed specifically, we're in Zechariah chapter 5, is stealing, and that's from the Ten Commandments. It's the eighth commandment. I think it's the 8th commandment. Over in Exodus 20, and then you got the swearing, which I think may involve bearing false witness and a practice of that, which would be the 9th commandment. So the consequences are those who are guilty of these things would be purged away from, according to the writing of the scroll. Means to cut off. I think that King James has the word cut off there in New Revised. They're banished. They're swept away. And it would result in the effect of the excommunication of these people, but ultimately, as Larry already stated, it's their destruction, total destruction. And not only would the scroll fly over the land, finding and banishing lawbreakers, but it would also, as we already mentioned, enter their house and consume all that they have, everything that they have, destroying it. And this vision reaffirms the moral It reaffirms the ethical standard of the law. And it also emphasized that none of the Jews can go around breaking the law that God has given them with impunity. Things have not changed from before they left and they were coming back. He still wants them to not break the law. So, even though he's redeeming them, his intention is for them, or to encourage them to not break the law, especially like the way they did before. Don't do it. As for the way I see verses 1 through 4. Any comments or questions on those few verses in Zechariah chapter 5? All right. Pretty easy, I think. I think that's not too hard to see. Okay. Verses 5 through 11. Oh, I'm in turn. Okay. Then the angel who was speaking with me went out and said to me, "Lift up now your eyes and see what is going forth." I said, "What is it?" And he said, "This is the ephah going forth." Again he said, "This is their appearance in all the land. And behold, a lead cover was lifted up, and this is a woman sitting inside the ephah." Then he said, "This is wickedness." And he threw her down into the middle of the ephah and cast the lead weight on its opening. Verse 11. Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and there two women were coming out with the wind in their wings, and they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heavens. I said to the angel who was speaking with me, "Where are they taking the ephah?" Then he said to me, "To build a temple for her in the land of Shinar, and when it is prepared, she will be set there on her own pedestal." All right. We're in Zechariah chapter 5, looking at verses 5 through 11 next. This is the seventh vision, and he's going to talk about how he's going to deal with sin and how he's going to remove sin from the land. So again, the angel speaks to Zechariah, tells him to take a look at this, and he talks about the ephah. An ephah was a way of measuring. It could be a container. But generally it's 7 gallons. A 7-gallon container. How big is this woman? Pretty small, but it's a vision, so who knows what's going on with that. As it comes, the angel lifts up the lid, and what is the lid made of? Lead. Have you ever picked up a thing of lead? How much does it weigh? It's heavy. So you got a lid that's made of lead. So that's a heavy lid. There's no getting out of this container. But he lifts it up, and inside, is the woman inside or is she outside? Huh? Yeah, she's already inside. And the woman in the vision represents wickedness. I think the wickedness of the land. But then the text tells us he throws her into the middle of it and closes the lid. Wasn't she already inside? What happened? Huh? Yeah, I think she tried to get out. Opened it up and wickedness tried to get out, but in the vision I perceive he grabs her, throws her back in, and slams the lid shut. No, you're not going to get out. We're taking you out of the land. And I think that's what the purpose of the idea of this part of the vision is. And also notice their appearance. This is their appearance in all the land. What's that? That's toward the end of verse 6. The New Revised Standard says this is their iniquity in all the land. So it's not that that's incorrect. I think they're trying to help us understand the passage. I think they're on the right track with calling it iniquity, even though it's an ephah. Or this is their appearance in all the land. But the appearance here is in reference to the woman inside the ephah. It's the wickedness, and that's what she represents. And this is the way they look in all the land. They have sin. And we've seen this a little bit before in other visions. What have the Jews been able to do about their sin this entire time over there in captivity? Could they go to the temple? The temple was not, no, they couldn't, and the temple was destroyed. Could they give sacrifice? They could not. Could they trust their the priesthood? No, they could not. Which is why God first shows with Joshua the high priest that, yeah, you can trust the priesthood now. Now, you do have wickedness, but I am going to remove the wickedness from the land, from you. And we're going to see that with the next part of this vision, where he looks up and there's two women, they come out, they have wings like storks, not angels. This is just a vision. And what do these two women do in the vision? Now, they pick up the ephah and they go to Shinar. Where is that? Babylon. And they take her there, and what does the angel say they're going to do for wickedness? Yep, build her a temple, build her a place to have where everyone that's a temple, or those who practice wickedness, can go and worship her, which is wickedness. Now, not literally going to, excuse me, I got a cough drop in my mouth. He's not going to literally go to a temple and they're going to worship wickedness. How is this playing out? What's the idea here? Now, this is obviously outside of the land of Judah. So what's the idea that God wants to get across to Zechariah, to his readers, to you and me, of what's going on?
They need to remove the wickedness.
Okay, they remove the wickedness from the land, but it's going to be a temple in the Babylonian area, the city there, Shinar. Why? We know that they're not going to literally go and say, I think today I'm going to worship wickedness. So what's the idea?
Can't come back.
Well, it's the rest of the world lives in wickedness. This is, even if it's not in their mind, they're going to go and do these things. This is that way of living, that choice that they make. Now, that is the choice the Jews had made, and now God's removing that from them. In other words, he's giving them a clean slate. But in the world, it's still there. It's still there. We are, like today, as Christians, sometimes people have the idea of, I really need to remove myself away from all the wickedness and the sin of the world, so what do? Then they may become a monk, right? And what do monks do? They go find the most remote place they can live, where they can study the Bible and be around nobody and just focus on themselves. So they're going to remove themselves from all sin. Is that really possible? No. It's always going to be around. You don't have to be of the world, but we do have to live in it. I think the idea is it's always going to be there, and these other nations just out there, in the world, that's where sin is, but you're not part of that. I'm removing it from you, but it's still there, and the world worships it. In other words, it chooses that over me. That's not going to be the way with you. I've removed it from you. I'm giving you another chance, again, actually, to do the right thing. That's the way I interpret this. It's letting them know, okay, you're coming back. You've never been able to do anything about your sin. You have sinned, but here it is. Here's the wickedness. I'm taking it away. I'm removing it from you, so that you can have that fresh start and you can be the people I want you to be. Does that make sense? Any comments, questions, disagreements?
I said one comment that had to do with the lid.
Mm-hmm.
First thing I thought of was this woman was radioactive.
Or kryptonite.
I mean, they may not have known that at this time, but that's one of the products that's used to prevent radioactivity from escaping is lead.
That's actually good at it. The influence of her cannot get out.
Yeah.
So for those online, lead's used to hold back radiation. You go get an X-ray, you put on the lead vest, so you don't get it here for her. You can only get it on your brain. It's to hold back the radiation. And so it's the idea, even though they didn't understand that then, God obviously does, is to hold back the influence of wickedness until she goes out there. And there is influence of wickedness. Remember when the the Israelites wanted a king, it wasn't because they wanted a king so they could be closer to God. They wanted a king so they could be what? Like the surrounding nations. I think God wanted them to have a king, but not for that reason. Their reasoning was flawed. They were being influenced by the rest of the world. And so the influence will always be there because she's going to get out of that, and they're going to build her a temple over there in Shinar in Babylon, and that's where wickedness will be worshipped. The influence will always be there, so they have to make a choice. And it's kind of an excursus here, but it always comes down to a choice. I'll talk about this a little bit in my sermon this morning. On X, Twitter, I saw a post. I thought about replying to it, but I didn't. I can't remember the philosopher's name, where he goes through and he has this questions about, is there a God? Is there evil? Did God create evil? Can he get rid of evil? And he has all these yes, no's, how they go off if he says yes, if he says no. But the logic on that is that if God cannot deal or did create evil, then is God evil? And then if God didn't create evil, then he's not God. He didn't create all things. And it goes and creates this paradox of that. How can there possibly be a God because of this? The flaw in that is they see evil as being a created thing. It is not. Evil is a choice. Was there anything wrong with eating the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Is there anything wrong with that fruit? According, when we know that when they ate it, their eyes were open. Was there something magical properties in that fruit that caused them to have that realization? No. What was it that made it wrong to eat the fruit? God told them not to. How I explain this to my kids is, let's say Mom baked chocolate chip cookies, and she's got it on that cooling tray, and is there anything wrong with you eating those cookies? No. And there never will be until when? Until Mom says, don't eat the cookies. As soon as she says that, what happens? Now there's a choice. You can do the right or you can do the wrong. But until that choice is set by Mom, there's nothing wrong with you eating it. God didn't create evil. Evil is a choice. Remember, what does sin mean? Miss the mark. Yeah, it means to miss the mark. It's like you're shooting an arrow and you miss the mark. That's all. It's a choice. You make a choice. So it's not a created thing. It is you choosing not to do it God's way. Mom didn't create evil. Right? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sometimes some people want to forget God has free will, gave us free will.
Yeah.
So they say, he created good wickedness. No.
No.
He gave us free will to choose.
That's right. And wickedness is not created.
No.
It is a choice. We choose it. And we need to always understand that. And the world has confused that so much, but it's not a created thing. It is a choice we make. And then there's consequences to those choices, which builds upon the problems because of the choices we make. Okay. That's my excursus. Went a little long. So I think we're done with chapter 5, unless there's another comment, question, or you want to build upon the excursus. Okay, chapter 6. God's wrath appeased. Let's start with verses 1 through 6. This is going to be the 8th and final vision. What did I say? Yeah, 1 through 6. Now I lifted up my eyes again and looked, and behold, 4 chariots were coming forth from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were bronze mountains. With the first chariot were red horses. With the second chariot, black horses. With the third chariot, white horses. With the fourth chariot, strong dapple horses. Then I spoke and said to the angel who was speaking with me, "What are these, my Lord?" The angel replied to me, "These are the 4 spirits of heaven going forth after after standing before the Lord of all the earth, with one of which the black horses are going forth to the north country, and the white ones go forth after them, while the dappled ones go forth to the south country. Okay, so now we see 4 chariots coming from between 2 bronze mountains. What's the idea of bronze? When you think of something bronze, what do you see? Huh?
Strong.
Okay, strong. What else?
Valuable.
Valuable, shiny. I don't know. For me, I always think of doorknobs. I don't know. They're just shiny, little bronze doorknobs. I remember growing up, there was the posts on my bed were bronze. At least it looked like bronze. I don't know. But it is strong. It shines. And so if you see a mountain of bronze, that kind of idea do you think comes to mind? And you see these 4 chariots coming from between them. Okay, powerful, absolutely powerful. Something coming forth from a divine, spiritual realm, from heaven, perhaps. So something not of this world, definitely. And they've got power. Now, we were asked, I think it was last week or a week or so ago, does it matter about the color of these horses? As we read through, we're going to see those colorings and spotting doesn't mean anything. I think it's just in there to give a description to the vision. These visions have really one main emphasis. So that's what we're going to look at. So let's wait on that, on trying to determine that, and see why he's seeing the vision and how it's being described to him. As he sees he is coming, he tells him these are 4 spirits of heaven there in verse 5. And they're going to go forth after standing before the Lord of all the earth. So you get this idea, on the other side of the bronze mountains, they were standing before God. So if they're standing before God and then they leave and come to the earth, it leaves you with the idea that they were given instructions. Here's what I want you to do. For the Jews, what does the number 4 mean?
Corners of the earth.
4 corners of the earth. And we see it in 2 ways. The 4 spirits from heaven and the 4 horses. At first it's the 4 horses. We'll see they'll be going out. And then also there in verse 5, these are the 4 spirits of heaven. So you got the idea of the 4 spirits of heaven, and they're going to go forth through the earth, these 4. So I think, in my mind, it's all the angels, the host of heaven, and they're going out. And they're going to do something. Now, it tells us in verse 6 where they're going. The black horses go to the north country, and the white ones go forth after them, while the dappled ones go forth to the south country. Okay. Now we're assuming that we're here in Jerusalem or in that area in Judea. What's north?
Babylon.
Okay, Babylon. Well, they're gone. You would actually go north and then head back over to the west, unless you want to try to cross the difficult desert terrain. But typically, if you want to go over there, yeah, you go up and then you go over. But you go north. In this case, since they're gone, it's the Medo-Persian Empire is going to be north. What is south?
Down to Egypt.
Okay, down to Egypt. Who are the Medo-Persians and I think you are right though. The Babylonians, or earlier it was the Assyrians and the Egyptians. Who are they to Israel? They're enemies. Those who oppressed them. Those who took it too far. Even though the Lord was angry a little, they took the wrath out on Israel too much. They took it too far. I think here in chapter 6, he's going to show that not only have I dealt with them, I'm going to continue to deal with those who oppressed you like I promised to do. Now, what is missing in verse 5 and 6?
Red horses.
Well, yeah, because who goes north? You got the black and the white. The dappled goes south. Where's the red? Well, he's still there. Who is he going to deal with? What enemies are there in where they're at?
Physically, all these people around that were opposed to them building the temple.
Who they will eventually call the Samaritans. He's going to deal with them. And I think also the Jews who come back and are not trying to do the will of God and build the temple and be who they ought to be. Are there going to be some of those? Yeah. I mean, we already saw the flying scroll who's going to go out and deal with those who are wicked, because they're bringing the curse. I think he's for that whole area there as well, and he's going to deal with that. How is he going to deal with them? And we do know, because we've read the Old Testament, because could those surrounding nations stop the Jews from building the wall, building the temple, and building up that Jerusalem and all that whole area? Could they stop it? Easily. Go ahead, Larry. You were going to say something?
They could have without God's intervention or without the king's intervention who sent them down here to build it.
Which was be God. So yeah, I think that's who God sent to say, no, I'm not going to let you come near them. And he did, because they could have stopped it. This was a remnant of a remnant of a remnant. There wasn't a lot of people there, and they weren't well armed. They weren't ready for war or had an standing army. They could have taken them out if they wanted to, but they never did, which is kind of surprising. Why? Well, maybe because there was God's angels there protecting and watching over them. Maybe that's the red horse purpose. We honestly, when we step back from it, we really don't know. The text doesn't tell us. But that's my assumption. I think the black and white, one goes to the Medo-Persia, the other one heads off to the west, and the other one goes down south to Ethiopia, Egypt, and the Edom, and the other places that are down south. Any comments or questions on that section? Does that make sense? Is that helping? Are you seeing what I'm seeing with these? And I really think it comes down to just seeing what is the main point. We don't need to get in to what the coloring of the horses means. I don't think they mean anything. Because even when I looked through and I looked up several things that people said they were, sure, that would make sense, but does that add anything to what's happening in their time and what we know is going to go on and what's going to happen? It adds nothing. But if we just leave it simply to what God wants us to see, I think that's all we need to worry about. That's what we know. And it is explained to us to a certain extent, and we can use those things. All right, verses 9 through 13. This is where we move away from the vision. Did I miss something? Did I read all the way down to verse 9?
No.
Oh, my fault. I'm sorry. Where did I stop?
Verse 6.
Okay, thank you. So let's read the verse 9. Verse 8. When the strong ones went out, they were eager to go to patrol the earth. And he said, go patrol the earth. So they patrolled the earth. Then he cried out to me and spoke to me, saying, see, those who are going to the land of the north have appeased my wrath in the land of the north. That's the verse 8. Okay. I think this is the angel God answering the question from the very beginning of Zechariah. And what he saw there was, should have had it ready to go, the whole earth, those who patrolled the earth, the whole earth was what? The patrol he sent out in chapter 1 came back and answered the Lord what was going on in the whole earth. It was at peace. It was at peace. Did God like that? You remember? He did not. Because the people who were at peace were those who were oppressing his people. They were at peace while they were oppressing his people, and he did not like that. So now he's got this other patrol. They're going to go out, and and as it says there in verse 8, those who are going to the land of the north have appeased my wrath in the land of the north. Now, he doesn't talk about the one to the south, or the red, who I'm assuming stayed there in Judea. So how, and that's that word appease there means they've satisfied what he's looking for. So how did they satisfy what God was looking for? It's already happened. This is something he's saying, it's already happened. I think it's the Assyrians and the Babylonians. Because who sent, let the Jews go? It was the Medo-Persian Empire under Cyrus, and now Darius, the second or first. They've done it. So they're not oppressing the Jews anymore. So that's been appeased. God's been appeased on those to the north. Who's left, I think, would be the Samaritans, or those who are there left in the land, and those to the south. Will that come? I mean, we know it will. Later on, the Egyptians will get wiped out. Who's going to take care of those down in Egypt? That's going to be Alexander the Great. He's going to go through and take out everybody, and that's pretty much the end of it. I believe that's where all that appeasement is going to come from him. And then we go forth to the Roman Empire from that point. Does that make sense? Any comments or questions on that section? All right. Either you guys are really tired or I'm amazing. I'm going to go with amazing. Okay. Now verses 9 through 13. I'm not going too quick here. In this section, this is where we're going to leave the visions. We're done with those. And now we're going to see the crowning of the high priest. We hinted on this a little bit in the past. Let's look at, read, what did I say? 9 to 13. Yeah. The word of the Lord also came to me, saying, let's stop there for a second. What is different from how he normally starts these? Verse 1, now I lifted my eyes again and looked, and behold, there was a vision. Chapter 5, then I lifted my eyes and again looked, and behold, and so on and so forth, all these different visions that came. Verse 9, the word of the Lord also came to me. See, that not a vision, is it? The Lord's telling him something. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, take an offering from the exiles, from Hildai, Tobijah, Jedediah, and you go to the same day and enter the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah, where they have arrived from Babylon. Take silver and gold, make an ornate crown, and set it on the head of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Then say to him, thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, a man whose name is Branch, for he will branch out from where he is, and he will build the temple of the Lord. Yes, it is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he who will bear the honor and sit and rule on his throne. Thus he will be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace will be between the two offices. Okay. So not a vision. His actions, though, would be seen as a sign to Judah. Now remember, God's telling him to do this. To go and do this. This is going to actually happen. He's going to create a crown, and he's going to put that crown on the head of the high priest, Joshua, as a sign to the people there in Jerusalem. So let's work through that text. Verse 10. First, he's to take an offering from the exiles who just recently came back from the captivity. Their arrival serves as a reminder. Number one, not all the Jews had returned to Palestine from Babylon with a group that was led by Zerubbabel. Number two, the Jews who remained had been exhorted to help with the expenses involved with the return, expenses involved with the rebuilding, and apparently also hear what Zechariah is going to do. And then at least some of the Jews in Babylon, the area, were prospering since they brought silver and they brought gold as an offering. And it appears you got a few here named Heldiah, Tobijah, and Jedediah. They come, they bring gifts for the temple, but they would themselves return to Babylon. The Lord's command is Zechariah took their offering, took it over to the house of Josiah, of Zephaniah. Is this Zephaniah the prophet? We don't know. We don't know who this is. It could have been clearly somebody that people knew. So he takes this. The New American Standard that I use seems to say that these three returned, were staying at the house of Josiah, and they are going to go back to Babylon. Other translations, like the New Revised Standard, says collect silver and gold from the exiles from, and then he names the three who have arrived from Babylon, and go the same day to the house of Josiah. Giving you the idea that he goes to Babylon, collects it from them, and then he comes back to the area. I don't think that matters. All we know is wherever they may be, he goes and collects from them. He gets the offering from them, and then he comes back, and he goes to the house of Josiah. Now, why go to the house of Josiah? What do you think? Who do you think Josiah is? What do you think he's doing? What do you think his profession is? Yeah, maybe he's a metal worker. That's what I would think. I don't see any other reason to go there other than that's where you're going to go to make the crown. Remember when they were going to build the temple the first time? What did God say? Build all the stuff for the tabernacle, not the temple. The tabernacle with. I've got certain men that I've prepared and are ready for these tasks, who can put these things together and build these things. So he's already got someone ready to do this. Josiah is going to be the one who makes this crown. Verses 11-13, so you got the ornate crown. He's going to set it on the head of Joshua, who is serving as the high priest. We've already seen him in a couple of visions. So again, we talked about this before, but let's go over it again. Does Joshua the high priest ever become a king? Yeah, there is nothing in biblical text that shows that, and there is nothing in secular history that ever show that. He never becomes a king. Do you think the people, the Jews, thought he was going to become a king? Maybe. I mean, it kind of leaves you with the impression, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you pull out the commentaries, and some of them say that Zerubbabel is that king. Does he ever become a king? Well, he was established by the Medo-Persian government to do what? To be what? Remember? To be the governor. He was established by them to be the governor there, which he does an amazing job at. He actually does a really good job with that. And so some try to say it's him, but it's not. Let me see, what else? The other possibilities. Some say that it is Joshua and Zerubbabel, that this is speaking of them. That they will both serve as high priest and king, leader over the land, which they do, but that doesn't seem to fit with what we're seeing. Let's look at it again. Verse 12, then say to him, thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, a man whose name is Branch. For he, the branch, will branch out from where he is, and he will build the temple of the Lord. Yes, it is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he who will bear the honor and sit and rule on his throne. Thus he, the branch, will be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace will be between the two offices. So who's going to be the high priest, and who's going to be the king in this picture? The branch, the same person, not two different people. And even when you open up the Talmud and look at Jewish commentary, they struggle with this, of what that means. They try to make it parallel making it apply to them that day and apply to future events, but that's kind of difficult to do. Have we ever seen anywhere in the Bible where a prophet will act out things, but those things that he's acting out aren't to be taken literally for that moment or for those particular people or those cities? It's just to give them as a sign to people to understand what's going to happen in the future. Ezekiel does that. He does that a lot, doesn't he? He was even, we won't get into all those, but because we only got a few minutes. But, we know who it is, but who is the branch? It's the Messiah. They have heard that term before. They know it's in the past with Isaiah and Jeremiah. It's been applied to the Messiah. But to see it put here is interesting. So he puts it on Josiah, and he says the branch will branch out from here and build my temple, which is something they're trying to do. But we know what temple he's talking about. We also know it can't be Josiah, who is a Levite. But he's talking about a branch, something different. I think it's showing them something coming later. Right now, they have the governor Zerubbabel, they have the high priest, they have two offices of two people doing separate things. But in the future, it's going to be different. It's going to be one and the same. The king will be the high priest. Isn't it interesting? Like if you were alive in the day of David, you go to the king, you make a request, and maybe the king stands up and says, let me inquire of the Lord first. But he can't go in there and actually do some of those things, like use the ephod. He can't go into the Holy of Holies. He can't go in there and make any kind of sacrifice for anybody. He has to go to the high priest to take care of those things, even though he's the king. He didn't have that authority. They were separate offices. But now, imagine being able to go to a king who's not only your king, but also your high priest. How great would that be? So if I was a Jew, I'd be thinking, that would work so much better than the current system, I think. If our king was the high priest. And so it's to get them to think, I think, about what's going to happen in the future. And of course, Jesus will come, and he will be king, and he will be the high priest, but not under the law of Moses, but a whole new one as we're learning through the book of Hebrews. And so, the branch, descended from David, will branch out. That's his influence, his authority expanded. He would build the temple. That's a spiritual temple. He would be honored. He will rule on his throne, and he'll unite the office of priest and king in one person himself. So I think those who saw Joshua crowned and first heard what Zechariah had to say about him, surely I'm thinking they may have applied those words to Joshua and Zerubbabel, perhaps. I shouldn't say surely, but perhaps. But they had to recognize a future fulfillment because he's talking about a singular person taking both of those positions, which would be unheard of. That has never happened before. So something different is coming. And Jeremiah made that clear also in chapter 33. Any comments or questions on that? All right. No? Okay. Well, next week we're going to get into the next section. It's a little, not a little, it's a lot tougher. So I want to do my best not to speculate, but these are a lot more difficult going forward, I think, at these chapters. Please read ahead, write down any comments or questions you might have, and we'll pick it up next week. Thank you.
Good morning. Jude 11 through 16. Woe to them! They have taken the way of Cain. They have rushed for profit into Balaam's error. They have been destroyed in Korah's rebellion. These men are blemished at your love feasts, eating with you without the slightest qualm, shepherds who feed only themselves. They are clouds without rain, blown along by the wind, autumn trees without fruit and uprooted, twice dead. They are wild waves of the sea, foaming up their shame, wandering stars for whom blackest darkness has been reserved forever. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about these men. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones, to judge everyone and to convict all the ungodly of all the ungodly acts they have done in the ungodly ways, and of all the harsh words ungodly sinners have spoken against him. These men are grumblers and fault-finders. They follow their own evil desires. They boast about themselves and flatter others of their own advantage.
Good morning. If you would, keep your Bibles open there. I am going to be looking through Jude verses, we'll review verse 11 and verses 12 to 16 here in just a moment. And, I got the picture up there, danger. I remember when I was in the Army, I was blessed in 2000 to 2003 to be stationed at Fort Shafter, Hawaii. It was difficult. Someone had to keep the island safe. That was me. But while I was there, I went to the beach. And at the beach, they had all these signs, strong currents or the riptide. Of course, being in the Army, they always had to have a class on how to deal with these kinds of problems. And so we had to sit through all these classes, and they talked about the riptide and the hidden reefs and the things out there in the water to be careful about. And they always said, you never know. When a wave comes, it could create a riptide. You could get pulled out in the sea. And they told us that you could get pulled in the water and you pop up a half a mile away. I thought, a half a mile away? No. I didn't believe that. They always exaggerate. And lo and behold, it didn't happen to me, but it did happen to one fellow. We saw it. Some tourist got pulled underwater. I remember watching, and then this lifeguard came running out and jumped out to the water and just kept swimming. He was just started going like so fast. I'm sitting there watching this guy, well, he went way past where he went under. And then I saw off in the distance, way out there, this little speck of this guy out there in the water. And that was him, pulled out by the riptide. He never saw it coming. And that can happen still today. So we've been going through the book of Jude. And I know the last several lessons on Sunday morning, not exactly the most encouraging, uplifting, I know, but there are times when we want to have those lessons. There are times when we want to maybe have a piercing lesson. But there's also times when we need lessons like this. Generally, we do it during the Bible class or Sunday night. But most folks are here on Sunday morning. And there are times when we need to be reminded of things that are happening just like this. To be wary of the danger. We tell our kids, stranger danger. Be careful. Avoid going out there and playing on the road where all the cars are. Copper Basin Bible Camp, summer camps are coming up. We do background checks on everyone who comes up and works up at the camp. Wouldn't it be helpful if there were signs or flags or warnings for situations for the church, if the dangers for us out there in the world and what people might bring to the table as being the truth? Well, the truth is there are signs. There are warning signs for us that God gives us right here in the letter to Jude. But before we get to that, a little review of what we were talking about last week from verses 8 through 11. Jude told us that these false teachers have taken the way of Cain. If you remember him from the book of Genesis. That is, they were self-righteous, they were arrogant. These men rushed headlong in the era of Balaam. They were characterized by greed. They perished in the rebellion of Korah. That is, they rebelled against God, His rule, His word, His ways. And they lead others to do the same. Those are snapshots of those who reject God for their own selfish desires. And this is really a snapshot of the apostate, the person who also, in this day and age, moves away from God. The people that Jude is writing to, and they're having to deal with as well. So he opens up there, the first part of Jude 12. These are the men who are hidden reefs in your love feasts, when they feast with you without fear.
Caring for themselves. Hidden reefs. There is a difference of opinion on what this word means. If you're using the NIV translation, it actually says blemishes or spots. I'm using the New American Standard. And so you get, imagine if you get a stain on your shirt. Imagine if I had a big old stain right here. I mean, every time I'd walk out this way, you'd probably stare right at my stain or some whatever blemish. And I know there's been blemishes or something wrong, because if there's anything off, I'll get there in the back at the end of the service, and someone undoubtedly will say, Chris, right there, you want to get that. Every time. Because anything that's out of the ordinary is obvious, becomes very clear to us. We can see it. And so the NIV says, it's a blemish, a spot, something that is pretty obvious. And that could be true. We do know that those things can happen, that you can have false teachers come in, and it's very obvious they're false teachers, and people are too scared to do anything about it. New American Standard says they're a hidden reef. Hidden reefs are those things that you would find out there in the water. They're rocks or coral that's underneath the water. You cannot see it. You may remember January the 13th, 2012, the cruise ship, the Costa Concordia, deviated from their planned route. This was over near Tuscania, and they struck a reef. 33 people died in that wreck. And eventually 5 of the crew members went on trial for manslaughter. Even though they had a planned route, they were supposed to hold to that route, because everyone who navigated those waters knew there was a hidden reef over there, so you need to go this way around it. They didn't want to. They wanted to cut across, get closer to the land, and they hit that reef, killing 33 people. They should have known better. These false teachers were present at what's called the love feast here in Jude's letter. On the Lord's Day, back then, what they would do, they would gather together, maybe in someone's home. They would sing songs. They would listen to a message from God's Word. They would sing another song, and then they would have a potluck, and then they would have the Lord's Supper. And it's just like our potlucks today. Of course, we don't do it during the worship service. We do it afterward over there. But in their idea in that day was that there were richer folks, and on Sundays when they would gather together, they would all bring food, and they would share with those who were less fortunate, didn't have all these things. They would share a meal together, all as one, great fellowship. And so you have these false teachers coming in these love feasts on this day, but they were not treating it the way they ought to. It could have been a beautiful thing, but we learn from Paul how these could be abused. He says in 1 Corinthians 11, "Therefore, when you meet together, it is not to eat the Lord's Supper. For in your eating, each one takes his own supper first, and one is hungry, and another is drunk. What? Do you not have houses in which to eat and drink? Or do you despise the church of God and shame those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you? In this I will not praise you." So I envision these folks are coming together. Some are refusing to share. They're getting drunk. They're pigging out on all the food that they have while others are hungry. Or maybe they're boasting about what they have and what others do not. Whatever it is, they're in there. They're hidden reefs. They're creating this evil. They're creating division. And they're breaking up the unity of the body of Christ. And they don't feel guilty about their behavior. And they care only for themselves. Peter writes in 2 Peter chapter 2, we see a lot of similarity between what Peter writes and what we see here in Jude. Suffering wrong as the wages of doing wrong. They count it a pleasure to revel in the daytime. They are stains and blemishes, kind of similar to what the NIV wrote over there. Reveling in their deceptions as they carouse with you, having eyes full of adultery that never cease from sin, enticing unstable souls, having a heart trained in greed, accursed children, destructive, dishonest, and bold hypocrites they are. They are clouds without water, carried along by the wind. The Middle East is a semi-arid region, a lot like it is here in Arizona. So rain is incredibly important. So if a farmer is out there and he's needing the rain for his crop, and he sees some dark clouds forming and growing and coming this way, he's expecting something, isn't he? Man, there's going to be rain. That's going to give me that life-giving rain I need for the crops and for my family. Here it comes, and it blows over, brings a lot of dirt because it's blowing all the wind, but no rain. A lot of times, my brother Corey, who lives down south of South Mountain, he'll call up and say, "Did you guys getting that rain?" I'll say, "Well, no, but we got dirted on quite a bit. I saw the clouds, saw the wind, but no rain, just a lot of dirt." Solomon writes in Proverbs 25:14, "Like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of his gifts falsely." So these teachers are, we would say, a lot of hot air. They are boastful. They may have style, but no substance. Their promises are empty. When I was younger in high school, I loved theater. I liked musicals. I liked going to them. And I was lucky to be in the Music Man. Now, I have a terrible singing voice. I know a lot of you already know that, so I didn't have any of the important roles. But I did enjoy that particular one because in that musical, the Music Man, you have that fast-talking traveling salesman, Harold Hill. And he cons the people of River City, Iowa, that your boys are going to be in trouble. There's this place, they got a pool table, and P stands for, no, I got that wrong. I forget what the song goes. But that stands for pool, and that was bad. You can't play pool, that was sinful. Yeah, that's right. And so what you need is a band, a boys' band. And guess what? I sell instruments. And I'll be the conductor, and I will help these kids get away from that sinful lifestyle. That guy didn't know anything about music. All he wanted to do was sell the instrument, make a lot of money, and then he was going to skirt town before the big parade where he was going to march this boys' band. It was all a lie. It was a con. It wasn't true. That's the false teacher. They come in boasting, playing a big game. They have all the right words. As one man once said, high wind, big thunder, no rain. And that's what they were. Cloud without rain. Autumn trees without fruit. Doubly dead, uprooted. Autumn is a time of ending the growing season. If a tree did not have fruit on it, there was something wrong, right? That was not the way it's supposed to be. They were fruitless, twice dead, because not only did it not produce anything, it's going to get cut down. It's not helping anyone around it, and it's not helping itself. Twice dead. Physically dead for the false teachers, spiritually dead as well, being in apostasy. Jesus said that believers will be known by their fruit, right? Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 to 19. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. There's those hidden reeds. You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Psalm chapter 1, the opening of Psalms. I always like the opening of Psalms. How blessed the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. And in his law he meditates day and night, not Sundays and Wednesdays, day and night. He will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and in whatever he does, he prospers. He brings forth fruit, good fruit. A tree does not produce fruit for itself, but for those things all around it. For the animals, birds of the air, you and me. But you have to know how to feed that tree correctly, right? I know how to not feed a tree. Many of you know, our visitors do not. I had a tree named George, and George did not make it George was overwatered and died. But I wanted him to produce apples. He was going to do that for me, any apple tree, and that was my goal. One day, I'm going to get another tree. We'll call him Bob, and Bob will produce good fruit, but only if I feed him correctly. A lot of times, we want to hear only the good, encouraging, uplifting lesson. Who doesn't like that? I know I like that. I like the encouraging, uplifting, but sometimes I need a reminder. Sometimes I need to be stirred up. And sometimes I need to remember that there is something out there that God is displeased with. And that there are actually people out there willing to use religion to steal from you and me, or to tear people down and move them away from God. They are wild waves of the sea, casting up their own shame like foam. Or as Isaiah puts it, but the wicked are like the tossing sea, for it cannot be quiet, and its waters toss up refuse and mud. So they're stirring, instead of stirring up good reminders, they're stirring up all the stuff from the past perhaps, and they're bringing it up, and they're pointing out all the faults in everybody, creating division, creating heartache, creating all these problems, but without ever pointing at themselves. So they're wandering stars, for whom the black darkness has been reserved forever. If you know or remember anything about astronomy, you would know that there is no wandering stars. Stars don't wander. Planets do. So back then, they didn't know that they were planets, but they knew that there were certain what they thought were stars that would move. Those were the planets. But there are other stars that are fixed, and if they knew which ones those were, they could find their way while using those fixed stars. However, the word here that Jude is using is more of a shooting star. He's not talking about the moving planet. He's talking about a shooting star. Did you guys see the video of that meteorite in Portugal that went over? If you hadn't seen that, that was amazing. And it's a great example of what he's talking about. There are so many videos online of this meteorite because it lit up the night sky. And when it went over, everybody on every video, they were completely distracted by what they were doing because of that meteor. I mean, if I was walking at night and all of a sudden the whole sky lights up, I'd stop what I was doing and be like, what is that? Oh man, it's the end of the world. No, I wouldn't think that. But it would distract me. Have you ever been distracted by somebody? You get your mind set on doing something, you're going a certain way, or going to a room, and maybe one of the children distracts you, or there's another distraction, you stop what you're doing, you deal with the distraction, and then you go back and you're like, what was I doing? You got off course. You got distracted. And that's what these guys do. They distract people. They're wandering stars, distracting people from the truth. And that's the fate, the fate of these false teachers is the black darkness that has been reserved for them forever. Again, back over to 2 Peter 2. These are springs without water, mists driven by a storm, for whom the black darkness has been reserved. For speaking out arrogant words of vanity, they entice by fleshly desires, by sensuality, those who barely escape from the ones who live in error, promising them freedom while they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. Whenever a man is overcome, or wherever he is overcome, by this he is enslaved. That goes right back to what we were saying not that long ago about Cain. We've been bringing him up a lot lately. What was it that overcame him? It was his anger, right? God saw that clearly because he's God, but he came and told him, why are you angry? Careful, Cain. Sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it, right? The anger. Don't let it overcome you, because if you do, you will be enslaved by it. And so many today are enslaved by their emotions. They don't control those themselves. They allow them to control them. And by it, they're moved away from the truth. They have darkened their eyes. And those who are enslaved by the things of this world and enslaved by their own desires will experience complete darkness forever. From here, Jude moves from gloom, gloom to doom. It was also about these men, Jude 14 and 15, that Enoch, in the seventh generation from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord came with many thousands of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to convict all the ungodly of their ungodly deeds, which they have done in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Now, with Enoch, I got a slide on that. We see in Genesis 5, he walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Always found that to be a fascinating verse. Who was Enoch? What do we know about Enoch? The Hebrew writer tells us a little bit. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death, and he was not found because God took him up. For he obtained the witness that before his being taken up, he was pleasing to God. So he was a somewhat of a mysterious person. He was faithful. He did not die. And Jude quotes, it seems, let me put this in. A lot of people think that he's quoting from a book called First Enoch. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. We do know that there was these writings that were written partially before the birth of Christ, partially after the birth of Christ. And this First Enoch book, which is not in our Bible, states a lot of things. And Jude seems to quote from that. Did he? We do not know. Maybe they're both quoting from another story that they both know very well. However, let me throw this out. Paul also quotes, not from First Enoch, but he quotes three separate occasions, from pagan poets to make a point. He's not saying that those pagan poets were all speaking truth about everything, but those particular things they did say were some truths. One of them you may know well from Titus, on the island of Crete, all Cretans are liars. Man, how would you like that to be known about you? All Cave Creekers are liars. That would be terrible. That's not true for everybody, but maybe here on the island of Crete, it's in general the truth. My point is that he is just simply grabbing something that has some truth in it that he is just using that they know about, things that they know and understand. And so he grabs this supposedly from First Enoch, and he's not saying that this is inspired work, but the prophecy, what he says there, is true. Behold, the Lord came with many thousands of his holy ones to execute judgment on all. He's going to come after the ungodly. And that is the operative word, right? Ungodly. We see it 4 times in verse 15. Jude took it as the right word to describe these false teachers. The words from First Enoch, it comes from First Enoch 1:9, because they broke that up in chapters and verses 2. But it says this, literally, he will destroy the wicked ones and censure all flesh on account of everything that they have done, that which the sinners and the wicked ones committed against him. So, his citation of these words says that what was written about the ungodly in that book also applied to the people that he is writing about. They spoke harsh things against God, which showed them to be ungodly sinners. As such, they faced the judgment, that is, the condemnation of God. Now, when we see that they spoke harsh things against God, did they literally say, well, God doesn't know what he's talking about? Nothing like that. You speak harshly against God whenever you twist the words of God, when you misrepresent what he has put forth. I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago in this same series, we talked about how they go out there and they'll say things like, they turn the grace of God into lasciviousness, verse 4. That's immoral. You don't need to worry about that. In fact, you can keep on sinning and the grace of God will cover you. You don't have to worry about not sinning. God will take care of it. Is that true? No, it's not. We know that's not true. That is turning the grace of God into lasciviousness. That is speaking against God. He never said that, but they do. And that would be speaking harshly about the things of God. So, they will be judged over and over. They're ungodly. The reason they're judged because of their ungodly words and deeds. Every day of our life, we are given a choice, just like these men are. And so let Jesus pay for our way into heaven through his sacrificial death. That's what we remember here when we took the Lord's Supper, the death he took on that cross. We can either choose to be with him for eternity, or we can choose to be in hell, an actual, real place. So the question for us is, are we ready for Jesus to come back? Are we ready for that? At this moment, I want us to take a little bit of an excursus. I mentioned it to the adult class that we were going to have a little excursus here. And what I want to talk about is something I saw on the internet. I get on X, Twitter, and there was this thing, I forgot to save it, but someone put up this little graphic where some philosopher of old had this graphic of, is there a God? And if there is a God, did he create evil? And he would have a yes and a no. If no, then he's not an all-powerful God because he didn't create all things. If yes, then why doesn't he do something about all this evil? And it goes all the way through this to show that there is no God because of evil and whatnot and what forth. There is a problem. Evil is not a real thing that is created. It's not a thing it's nothing that was created. Evil is a choice. And here's the illustration. All you kids here, do you like chocolate chip cookies? Like chocolate? Yes, the chocolate chip cookies, sort of. And whatever it might be. Let's say mom at home baked chocolate chip cookies. And she puts it on the cooling rack. She hasn't said anything about it, but you can smell it. At that moment, when they're sitting there, is it a sin, is it wrong for you to eat one of those chocolate chip cookies? You say yes, but your mom hasn't said anything yet. There's no rules. There's no rules about that yet, unless you know what the rules are. But let's say mom then says, do not eat the chocolate chip cookie. But you do eat a chocolate chip cookie. Did you just commit some sort of sin against your mother? Yeah, you did. You did. There was nothing wrong with it, eating the cookie, until mom said no. Then, and only then, does it become wrong. Just like in the Garden of Eden. There was nothing wrong with eating of the fruit of any tree until God said, not that tree. As soon as he said that, then there was a choice. The choice is either do it God's way or do it my way. Sin is missing the mark, like shooting an arrow at a target and you miss the mark. But you do it on purpose because you want to do it your way. That's evil. Not a created thing. It is a choice. We were created with free will to choose. We can choose to do it my way. We can choose to do it God's way. God loves us so much, he's going to allow us to have what we want. If you want to live eternity with him, he has shown us the way through his Son. If we want to live eternity without him, he's going to give us that as well. In this life, he loves us too much to allow us to go ignorantly into that. And so he has given us all through creation, through ourselves, we put it inside of us. He's given us his word to warn us about the dangers of not doing it his way. Many people think they can live this life on this earth without God. But they cannot. Every choice they make, they're going against God. But God's still in control. He's still the parent. He's still the head of the house. But one day, if they continue down that path, he will allow them to have life without him. What would happen to this universe if God really actually moved away and stopped intervening in any way whatsoever in this universe? It'd completely fall apart. What would life be like if you had to live eternity where God's presence, his control, there is none of that? It was all removed. Sounds like hell, doesn't it? Well, that's what it is. And so he's giving us that choice. And he warns us, you better do it my way. If you love me, if you want to do it my way, you'll do what I say. Don't eat the cookie. If you don't do it my way, I'll give you what you want. But you're not going to like it. And it will be for eternity. Don't listen to these false prophets. All through the Old Testament, we see these same kinds of false prophets cropping up here and there all over. Remember when the Israelites first went to captivity, the prophets told them, it's not going to last long. A couple of years. False. 70 years. And then or going back even further, when the Israelites sent the 12 spies into the land of Canaan to spy it out, despite all that God had shown them of what he could do in Egypt, at the crossing of the Red Sea, crossing of the Jordan, and all that didn't come later, sorry, jumping ahead. And then all that he did for them leading up to the promised land on the Mount Sinai, giving of the law, all the miraculous power. He clearly was with them, even fed them. And yet 10 of them came back and said, we can't take the land. Amazing. It had only been a year since Egypt. 1 year. And they could not remember such an amazing thing. It's why we take the Lord's Supper every week, so we never forget what God has done for us, so that we choose him. In verse 16, we see 5 more descriptions of these false teachers. These are grumblers, finding fault, following after their own lust. They speak arrogantly, flattering people for the sake of gaining an advantage. The Greek word used here for grumblers is not used anywhere else in the Bible, and it means to murmur or to buzz like a bee, to insult God who gives us all things. Or, for the kids again. Your mom makes you a supper, right? If she works and slaves in the kitchen all day, and she sets the food down before you, and you say, I don't want to eat this. Is that the right thing to say? Yeah, that's right. That's the face you make. You don't say that. You don't say that to mom. After all she did to give you that, you don't stick your nose up at it. You don't grumble about it. After all what God has done, how could we ever grumble against anything? Fault-finding, a word that means to place the blame, always complaining, and it's never your fault. So these are people whose spiritual gift is pointing out what you do wrong. And these false teachers were known for their complaining, especially about the rules God has given. They follow after their own lust. That it would be their own evil desires. So in the end, the false teachers don't care about the rules. They, in their minds, have freedom to do whatever they want. As Paul talked about, you can't do. Shall we continue in sin that grace may increase? May it never be. But they are characterized by their lust and by their greed. They speak arrogantly, full of hot air. They're pompous, arrogant, and talk a lot. Caitlin Clark, you guys hear about Caitlin Clark, the basketball player? She went into the NBA. She was playing for Iowa. Is that right? Played for Iowa? Is that right? Yes. Okay, good. I like her. I like her because she is not arrogant. I saw this little clip online of someone play where she was being interviewed, and this interviewer, they keep trying to get her to talk about herself, all that she's doing. They would be impressed but frustrated because all she wanted to talk about were her teammates and all that they did and how all their accomplishments. So she talked about Hannah and Molly and Sydney and Gabby and all these others who were on her team. She would not speak arrogantly. That's the attitude we need to have. Flattering people, these false teachers, for the sake of gaining an advantage. That comes from the French word that means to stroke with the flat of the hand. Paul wrote to the Romans in Romans 16:18, for such men are slaves, not of our Lord Christ, but of their own appetites, and by their smooth and flattering speech they deceive the hearts of the unsuspecting. Unsuspecting because they don't ever look at the warning signs. They think, I can handle it. I'm not worried. I don't need to read the Bible. I've already read it this year, so I'm good to go, right? I took the Lord's Supper Sunday. I'm good for the whole week. Meditate on it night and day. we need to always make sure we're on the right path. We don't deviate from it. And the only way we can know we do that is if we know what the truth is. What is the antidote for recognizing the prophets of doom, the apostates, those who are leading people away from the truth? Meditating on the Word of God. To make sure we are in the worship service. Not just necessarily on the corporate worship service, but in our whole lives. We are always working on changing our minds and hearts, our attitudes in this life to be acting out the real truth that we see in God's Word. There's a story. Now this, I don't know when this was done. I don't think it was anytime recently. I think it was a while back. There was a lady. She was a bus driver in San Diego. And there was this guy who wrote for the San Francisco Chronicle, and he was always kind of grumpy and upset. And he noticed, though, about this particular bus driver, she was always in a good mood, good attitude, never frustrated, very patient with everybody. So he thought, I'm going to write a story. I'll ask my editor if I can write a story about her. So he did. And he noticed as he would ride the bus, she would come to a bus stop where there would be nobody, but she would stop and wait. And after about a couple of minutes, somebody would show up and get on. She knew them by name. She would help the elderly bring in their groceries. She would talk with everybody. She was kind to everybody. And so when he asked her about that, she said, well, my day starts at 2:30 in the morning. I'd wake up about an hour early, and I would read my Bible, and I would pray and thank God for my missionary work on the bus. He's like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean you're not paid? You do this as a missionary work for a church? He goes, no. I do this for God. I don't do it for a paycheck. I do it so I can reach people and help people. I love people like Christ loved me, she said. Didn't do it for a paycheck. Don't you think that's the attitude this country started out with? We look out in this world. Do we feel like it's changing? Moving in the wrong direction? If you look in history, you see that's always happening. Back and forth, ups and downs. It's almost as if every once in a while we forget. We forget because we're at ease. Everything's going well. Everything's happy. We don't need God anymore because we've got this. We don't need God anymore because everything's already going well. And so we start pulling away, thinking it's all our own work. And we start working for the money rather than for one another, to help each other. Why do you work the job you have? Why do you work so hard at being a dad or being a mom or grandmother, a friend? You work hard to be a friend so that you don't have to have any problems with your neighbors, so that they will do something for you, that maybe if I'm nice to my mom and dad, I'll get an inheritance when they pass away? Or do you do it because you know that's pleasing to God? Because you recognize that everything we do is a choice. Everything we do is a choice. So if that's true, is every choice that we make, should it have something to do with God? Most people would say, no, not everything, Chris. Well, this lady, she didn't even see her job of making money so she can pay her rent and maybe get a car and have food. She didn't even see that as, I'm working this job so I can have money. It's my missionary work. I don't work for the money. That's a perk. I work for the Lord. And if you had that kind of attitude, and let's say she got fired, she had to get another job that made less money, would that matter to her? It wouldn't. Her work continues. It wasn't about the money. It was about the Lord. She saw that no matter what this life was, it was a missionary work to help people see God. That's what God wanted the Israelites to do.
In our Bible class on this Sunday morning, we're going through the book of Zechariah. They're coming out of the captivity. And again, God reminds Israel, He wants them to be a light to the Gentiles. He wants the Gentiles to see, here's what happens to people who follow me. I bless them. And that's still true today. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works, whatever those may be. And they may glorify Chris or Steve, Kyle, Dan, or Theo? No. So they may glorify your Father who is in heaven, so that you have an opportunity to be that light. Because God loves you and them. And He wants them to make the right choice. There is a hell. Separation from God. Real separation from God. Not in the here and now, but there. When there's no more choice. When you will have what you want. Eternity with the Lord or eternity with yourself. Where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth and darkness. I can't imagine what that would be like with the Creator of all things, and He removes His influence from it. The choice is always with us. There are plenty of danger signs. And sometimes we have to have lessons to remind us, not only of the dangers that we have in this world, but the responsibilities we have for ourselves and for those all around us. And every day we wake up with that choice of how we start the day and how we approach it. For myself or for the Lord. Are you ready for Christ to come? Are you ready to accept the choices you've made in life? Either put on Christ or put Him off. We want to offer you His invitation this morning. An invitation to put Christ on, to choose Him every day. Let's do that now while we stand, while we sing.